For most of us, our environment and circumstances work against our health. Convenience foods are anything but healthy. We're paid to be sedentary, and there's never enough time in a day to meet all the demands. When we decide it's time to make a change, how do we hit reset? What if there are 5 keys to optimal wellness, and we could just start working on them 1 or 2 at a time until we can make them a habit? Stand by. Go Healthy for Good starts right now. Hello and welcome to Go Healthy for Good. Our story today is about our expert guest. He shares a momentous moment in his life. Watch.
Well, the most indelible moment I recall first, knowing that there was an issue in the family, was after my father had done rounds. He was a urologist, and he would have me wait in the gift shop area of the hospital, of course, with money to buy all kinds of junk food and read Marvel comic books, which I loved doing. And then we went to a McDonald's, and he ordered food, but he actually ate an entire order of French fries while I was sitting on the counter before the hamburger hit the tray, and then ordered another fry. And I was looking at everyone patiently to the left and right not doing that and saying, my dad is odd. That was like an animal. Just he went through those French fries like a beast. You know, this was something was not right. And I don't think it really outwardly struck me as much as I was getting into nutrition and fitness thanks to a school that I went to that really focused on it. I don't think I was aware how much that kind of binge eating was a real disorder in my family and myself. And until one day, oddly, you know, I'm practicing lifestyle medicine, but I'm having to deal with my own binge eating episodes. And one night, I'm not sure exactly what was stressing me. It was probably something that had to do with work, maybe oddly enough. And I ordered it was either 2 medium or 2 large pizzas, I can't remember, but it was way too much for one person. And I put almost all of it away myself. And at some point that morning, I awoke, literally asphyxiating myself with vomit. I woke up, could not breathe. It was completely impossible to breathe, and I just remember trying to get air, and I'm in this apartment by myself, and I mean, I could kind of see the stars closing in. I said, I'm about to go, this is it. And I somehow, or I don't know what happened, but how I thought of it, but I just ran backwards as fast as I could, slammed my back into a wall, and then I got air, and I was able to pull myself out of it. And the odd thing was I literally did see flat visions. I just didn't see my past. I actually saw what I recall as a vision of a Detroit newspaper, with a headline saying nutrition doctor, dies with pizza boxes and dried pizza crust around him. And I think maybe that was a sign that I saw a vision, but it wasn't the past, it was the future, so it wasn't my time to go. That really, I think, was a point in which I didn't grab complete control of my binge eating, but it was a moment in which this can't happen at this level anymore.
And he made sure of that. You'll find out how later in the show. He'll also share with us his medical expertise. We'll do a mini workout with Sean, watch Chef Mark Anthony make a dessert filled with healthy fats, and kick things off right now with the news. In the headlines, exercise curbs appetite, e-cigarettes with tobacco a hazard, and Finnish saunas/stroke. One mechanism by which aerobic activities such as running, cycling and swimming may help to control weight is by reducing appetite. Researchers wondered if a rise in body temperature during exercise may activate appetite-suppressing neurons in the brain. To test their theory, they put mice on treadmills for 40 minutes to mimic the average gym workout. The mouse's temperatures rose and remained high for over an hour. Following the workout, their appetite was reduced to about half that of the non-exercising control mice. The appetite-suppressing neurons were then blocked and the mice put through their paces again. This time, their appetite was as voracious as ever. So if temperature has an effect, be sure to work up enough of a sweat to burn calories and suppress your appetite. Those who think that e-cigarettes are safer than conventional cigarettes need to think again. Daily use of either conventional cigarettes or e-cigarettes can nearly double the odds of a heart attack, according to a new analysis of 70,000 people. Many users, though, use both conventional and e-cigarettes on a daily basis. That increases the risk of heart attack by 5-fold when compared with non-smokers. E-cigarettes do not burn tobacco but deliver nicotine aerosol by heating a liquid and are therefore perceived to be safer. However, like conventional cigarettes, they deliver ultrafine particles and other toxins that are linked to cardiovascular disease and lung disease. So don't be fooled, smoking is still not safe. Frequent saunas appear to reduce the risk of stroke, according to a European study. Researchers from the University of Bristol in the UK followed a group of middle-aged and elderly people for 15 years. Those who had between 4 and 7 hot dry saunas a week were 60% less likely to have a stroke than those who had once weekly saunas. Traditional Finnish saunas open up blood vessels and lower blood pressure. The high temperatures also increase circulation, stimulate the immune system, stabilise the autonomic nervous system, and reduce inflammation, oxidative stress, and arterial stiffness. Other research has shown a link between saunas and lower cardiovascular disease and mortality. We don't know if these findings also apply to infrared saunas, steam rooms, or hot tubs. I'm Dr. Nerida McKibben, and that's today's Health News. Most of us don't think about our metabolic health, nor do we discuss cardiometabolic disease. It's a loaded term, and many of us already have it, whether we know it or not. Today's guest, Dr. Tom Rafai, is an expert in this field, and here he explains cardiometabolic disease.
Certainly it is related to issues that can affect the heart health, but let's start with some of the big basics. We now know that we have approximately 90 million pre-diabetics in the United States. 9 out of 10 don't even know they have it. That's one example of a cardiometabolic disorder, and obviously type 2 diabetes. Also hypertension, cholesterol problems or lipid issues that can be high cholesterol, but it might also be just high triglycerides or low levels of good cholesterol. Many of these are driven by something called insulin resistance, which is another big term, but is largely driven essentially by a scenario of calorie overload, where we are taking in a lot of calorie-rich and processed foods and we're not moving very much. And this overloads the system, particularly when you combine excess sodium to get things such as elevated blood sugar as the pancreas burns out the ability to continue to manage that much sugar. The blood pressure rising as the amount of excess sodium starts to become overwhelming. And then cholesterol problems that can also develop from excess saturated fat or excess sugar, which can drive up LDL, cholesterol, and triglycerides, and all of these tend to put people at significant cardiovascular risk, true, heart attack and stroke. But we're also seeing, for instance, what's good for the heart is good for the brain. There's increased dementia risk. There's going to be increased even cancer risks, kidney disease risk. And one of to wrap it around back to the beginning, I think most significant numbers that I really would like people to know about is the rather massive number of people now defined as pre-diabetic. Cardiometabolic issues are largely, though, lifestyle-driven scenarios that are largely preventable and driven by a constellation of excess nutrients and sometimes lack of others, such as excess sodium but lack of potassium, leading to blood pressure, with inadequate physical activity, resulting in significant risk of the heart, but also diabetes, dementia, chronic kidney disease, and even several forms of cancer.
All of those conditions, we can kind of think of them down the track. How does cardiometabolic health impact us here and now, our quality of life, or how does it change today?
Our performance, for instance, even work performance, can be slowed by poor lifestyle, that can result in modest amounts of even depression, lack of efficiency. Of course, if we start to gain a significant amount of weight and we have issues related to back problems, we're out of work. So there can be signs that are more subtle as they creep up on us that we wouldn't otherwise know. But when you deal with people in lifestyle medicine and they improve their lifestyle after they get scared by a lab result, they're surprised to have these results from not only the labs, but how much better they feel, how much more mobile they are. Of course, in dramatic cases where there's great improvements in health, whether it's the knee and inflammation or weight, people talking about how they can travel and they were never able to do so before. But one of the tragedies, though, of course, too, is that many people, it will be unbeknownst to them. It will creep up on them like the many who suddenly have an event and then have their lives changed forever or lose their life. So that's important to know. But we have good indications that people will feel better, better energy, better mood, probably better work performance as well.
So there's immediate payback by addressing it. More in the next segment, so stay with us. So before the break, there's this.
I love eating cultured food.
Cultured food?
Yeah, this is a culture medium in which a large colony of friendly bacteria live. And when I eat them, they go into my tummy and they help me digest my food, assimilate my nutrients, and they boost my immune system.
So is that like blue cheese? I used to work in a restaurant and I made blue cheese dressing about 30 gallons a week. I'd take these big wheels of blue cheese, grind them up, and the smell would permeate the whole restaurant and the waitresses would come back and complain. I thought you said they were friendly.
Yeah, well, you have to consider the colony that you're eating.
Well, how do you know?
In your case, it's unfriendly.
Well, how do you know the difference?
Well, you think about it. Cheese causes headaches, migraines, irritability, indigestion, and poor sleep.
That sounds pretty unfriendly to me.
Exactly, very unfriendly. And those bacteria are actually not good for your intestinal microflora.
Well, not only that, the cheese is cultured for many months, severely oxidizing the cholesterol.
Right, and oxidized cholesterol is lethal to your arteries. Within 24 hours, you're already starting to develop plaques.
So coming back to friendly bacteria, are you saying that there's a war going on in our gut between the friendly bacteria and the pathogens?
That's right, there is. And if we have antibiotics, we wipe everything out and we have to start all over again. That's when the battle really rages. And so it's important. The other thing is we have a very hygienic lifestyle. And so we don't carry as many bacteria probably as we used to. So it becomes even more important to replace the bacteria in our guts with friendly stuff.
So if I eat this yogurt, will I be a cultured man?
Well, at least on the inside. Doctor's orders.
Thanks, Doc. I'll eat to that.
Me too.
A few years ago, my husband's sister made him a chocolate chip cookie cake for his birthday, and he's talked about it ever since because we've never had another. It's so decadent. But do you know what? I've got Chef Mark Anthony here today, and guess what he's making?
We're making a chocolate chip cookie pie.
Okay.
And this is made with einkorn flour. So we're actually using 2.5 cups of the einkorn flour. We've got a 1/4 cup of coconut flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 cup of applesauce, 1/2 cup of honey, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and then I have a ground flaxseed in hot water, which is used as a binding agent, like an egg substitute, and then a couple cups of the carob chips. So what we do is the wet ingredients and dry ingredients. So I'm going to let you put the wet ingredients in here, which is your applesauce, your honey. This is the ground flaxseed in water. It's an egg replacer, and it just thickens it up like that.
It's kind of gloopy like eggs.
And then that. And then I'm going to start working on the dry ingredients. So we're going to mix those together, and of course I've got the baking soda and the baking powder, and a little bit of salt. But I am going to mix this. And you can sift this if you like. A lot of people do the sifting.
Oh, yeah.
I only do that for cakes. It really helps cakes. But for anything else, you can just take a wire whip like this and mix it, and you're good to go. So that works really good.
Yep.
Okay, and once you have yours mixed together, I have mine mixed together.
Yep.
Then we can put it all together.
All right.
Right here. And I'll put it in your bowl. You got the bigger bowl.
Okay.
So we're going to put it right in your bowl. And Now this will probably take a wooden spoon
Mama's
to do
wooden
this part.
spoon, right.
In fact, I've also got this here that I'm going to need to get a spray on.
Okay.
We're going to give this baby a mix right here. Now the reason I invented this recipe was I actually did the what do they call pancake. I actually make pancakes in these pans.
Oh, yeah.
Put all
Yep.
the pancake batter in there, throw it in the oven, blueberry pancakes, anything you want. And you can
Really?
make those. And I thought,
And
well,
then it's thick.
yeah, yeah,
Huh.
it just puffs up and it's gorgeous.
Oh,
One of my
wow.
recipes that. Now you see how thick this is too.
Yeah.
People would be like, you know, einkorn flour acts a little differently than a lot of other flours.
It's still got the stretchiness of a gluten flour, though.
It absorbs, yeah, it still does have gluten in it.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if it's just a different type of gluten or,
Why the gluten
Yeah.
sensitive people can tolerate it.
but
Yeah.
we've had a couple people now that we've tested it on and that are celiacs or gluten intolerant, and they have not had a problem with this. So soon people will learn more about it. But okay, bring that
Yep.
on over here. And we're gonna just get this right in here. I love these recipes that's just mix your dry ingredients, mix your wet ingredients,
Biff them together.
throw it in the oven,
Yep.
and you're done.
Yeah, and you walk away.
Now, you'll have to spread this out just a little bit.
Yep. But it looks like it spreads real easy there.
This is gonna go in the oven at 350 degrees for about 15 to 20 minutes.
That's all?
Yeah, and you want to just get some browning on the top. And you look at this like, how's that going to turn out? Well, we've got one right there that will show you how it's going to turn out.
Okay.
I haven't cut into it yet, so
Wow,
Here
that
we
looks
go.
beautiful.
and of course, if you're going to cut pie, I kind of like getting my squares first.
Well, yeah.
And then from here, you can decide if you want to go this way for a bigger slice, or if you want to do a smaller slice, then you could do thirds. So you get your
Gotcha.
thirds this way.
Yeah.
So it's kind of, you know,
That's fun.
whatever you want to do as far as slices go. And grab a pan, and we'll, that plate right there.
Oh,
I'll
yep.
see if I can get this underneath and see. Oh, look at that.
Ooh,
See how that works?
That looks beautiful.
Yeah, just like that.
Gorgeous.
You've got a chocolate chip cookie pie.
Let's see.
Taste panel. It is so good.
That is so good.
Yeah, amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm going to keep that a secret. Next birthday, my hubby's going to get one.
There you go.
Remember, our recipes are all on the website hopetv.org/gohealthy. As a boy, Tom noticed his dad almost inhaled his food. It was so quick. Tom realised it was unusual behaviour, but it didn't prevent him from binge eating almost to death. Food featured largely in his growing up years. Watch.
The problem with bodybuilding is it's a form of eating disorder. I mean, you really get so strict, and then we would end up at a pizza parlor afterwards, putting on, you know, pounds and pounds. I would fluctuate between 162 to 202 pounds, it was not. There were healthful components, but there was the extremeness of it was not healthy. So yes, at one point I hit over 200 pounds, and I had fatty liver. My father's physician, his diabetologist, actually saw me at a party at one point and said, "Tom, I think you need to come into the clinic. I'd like to just check some labs on you." And at that time, the metabolic syndrome was called Syndrome X. You know, he said, "Oh, you have this Syndrome X. You have elevated liver enzymes. Your good cholesterol's low, and you're going to become diabetic faster than your father, who was on insulin by the time he was before he was 40." Tried to find control by being zero tolerant, and zero tolerant doesn't really work well for binge eating. It results in that blowing up of the pressure cooker without the release valve.
Good reason to eat a wide variety of healthy foods, prepared attractively. We're talking today with Dr. Tom Rifai about optimal wellness. I asked him how realistic it is to expect most people to be quite healthy.
80 to 90% of type 2 diabetes, certainly at an early age, should not occur. 80% of heart disease, heart attacks, for instance, on the order of, it depends on who you read, what you read, but 30 to possibly even 70, 80% of cancers And the evidence is building that dementia itself may be really a cardiometabolic disease, and who knows yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's 50 to 80%. And remember, many of these numbers also can be delayed, even if not prevented, they're delayed and they're much less severe if occurring later in life. So that to me is also a big win, but many of them completely preventable. Of course, we have to make a significant change in our society and our culture and environment to support the type of lifestyle changes necessary to achieve those dramatic numbers. It's pretty tough in today's atmosphere and culture.
It is, it is. So give us some examples of those interventions, some effective interventions that have been done.
Yes. Well, certainly the diabetes prevention program stands out. A over 3,000 person randomized controlled trial run by the National Institutes of Health comparing metformin, which is arguably the best drug we have for preventing disease, versus a placebo pill. So a true, gold standard randomized controlled trial versus a therapeutic lifestyle change intervention, essentially 1,000 in each of these groups, all pre-diabetics. And finding that metformin was rather impressive, 31% reduction in type 2 diabetes over several years just taking this medication.
So just watching pre-diabetics to see if they proceed and get the type 2 diabetes.
Right. Yeah.
And 30% with the metformin didn't go on to get the type 2
That's
diabetes.
Right.
That's good, isn't it?
It is pretty good. I would say that's rather impressive until you hear how rather modest lifestyle changes with about 150 minutes of physical activity per week and an average weight reduction of about 7% resulted in an almost 60% reduction in type 2 diabetes. And in the diabetes prevention program, those who were able to achieve a more than 10% weight reduction had something along the lines of an 80% or more reduction in type 2 diabetes progression from prediabetes. That's probably one of our best known large trials. And of course in Finland and in Asia, they performed similar studies and found almost the same exact numbers.
And what happens with the placebo group? How many go on to get type 2 diabetes?
The conversion rate is probably on the order of 6 to 8% per year, but keep in mind it's not just the type 2 diabetes. There's still chronic cardiometabolic issues such as low good cholesterol, these particles HDL that clean the arteries of cholesterol being low, the triglycerides being high, the blood pressure being elevated. So blood sugar is just one component of this so-called cardiometabolic syndrome, or what we call in short metabolic syndrome, which essentially is a constellation of 5 findings, any 3 of which would constitute increased cardiovascular and cardiometabolic risk that we discussed. And they can be, yes, elevated blood sugar is one, but elevated blood pressure, resting blood pressure, not even hypertension of 140 over 90, but even 130 over 85, resting blood pressure, either number qualifies as a satisfaction of one of the 5 criteria. Low levels of good cholesterol, essentially less than 40 in men and less than 50 in women. And triglycerides that are elevated above a 150 level fasting. Many would argue the New American Heart Association level of 100 is more appropriate. And then, of course, the abdominal circumference is what the International Diabetes Federation would use, which is not too easy, not too difficult to satisfy. It's 37 inches, and it's not around the tailor's waist, but it's what we should probably call the abdominal circumference, not the waist, because it's generally around the navel or the belly button for the public audience, 37 inches in men and 33 in women. And in some high-risk populations, like in Asian women, it would be 31.5 inches. So it's not too difficult to meet that criteria. But you can easily have 3 of 5 and one of them not be elevated blood sugar. So just because someone doesn't convert to type 2 diabetes, it doesn't mean that there isn't continued risk. Prediabetes, and I have a personal wish that we would just call it in some way, shape, or form early diabetes, because prediabetes makes it sound like there's no problem yet, but it's coming. Well, it's actually, there's a problem right now, and there is a macrovascular risk, heart attack and stroke. And yes, if your blood sugar goes up, what really ends up happening is you have that risk plus a little more of it, and some microvascular risks like the eyes, the #1 cause of working age blindness, chronic kidney disease, along with hypertension. Type 2 diabetes is a leading cause of requiring dialysis, and then of course a major cause of non-traumatic amputations and this neuropathy and vascular issues in the legs. That gets added on as your blood sugar goes up, but it's not as if in prediabetes you don't already have an elevated heart attack and stroke risk. It's a problem right then and there.
Right, so it's not something you should ignore at all.
It's not something you should ignore, yet 9 out of 10 Americans not knowing they have it, and sometimes blood tests are done for it, and we as physicians need to do a better job of conveying it. Sometimes I've heard terms as patients who come to see me that, well, a doctor said I have a little sugar. That's a bit vague. You know, if you have an A1C, which is now a commonly used test because it doesn't require fasting, of 5.7, and it should be confirmed, you can double check it, but 5.7 to 6.4 is prediabetes. A1C blood test doesn't require fasting, again, at 6.5 and higher, diabetes. That range, 5.7 to 6.4, is a problem, not a little sugar or not something's coming down the line. It's something is happening now. And the more I think people are aware of it and how powerful lifestyle at a rather modest level can be, as we've said from the diabetes prevention program, I think the more motivated people will be to make a change.
Before the break, here's more motivation to make changes. Imagine walking down the street at night and someone puts a knife to your throat. You would know your life was in danger. Well, in Proverbs, God says, put a knife to your throat if you're given to appetite. That's a very intimidating word picture, but let's look at it from God's perspective. He created men and women with appetites and desires. He designed us to have pleasure and enjoyment. He intended for us to seek after things that bring satisfaction and fulfillment. But sin has distorted those appetites and desires. Instead of them being under the reason and restraint, they control us. Adam and Eve failed in the area of appetite and desire, and so did those in Sodom and Gomorrah. And in our day, unrestrained appetites and desires for food, drink, and pleasure results in death and illness. It's crippling us financially even. So this word picture of a life and death struggle is perhaps understandable. And with that being said, are you willing to take action on your unrestrained desires? You'll notice we always stretch before and after our exercises, and that's because flexibility is an essential part of fitness. So if you can't touch your toes, you need to join us right now, and if you can, join us anyway. So Sean, what's our limbering activity today?
Our limbering activity today will be a cardio workout, okay? Now the goal really is for us to really elevate our heart rate, to be able to recover as much as possible, but push ourselves as hard as we can, all right? So in order for us to get started, let's start with some bringing up your knees one at a time, because we have an exercise where we're doing some marches or some high knees. And I'm gonna challenge you to really push yourself outside of your comfort zone today. So this warm up is really to get you geared for your workout, okay?
All right.
So do that for about 30 seconds, taking your time and breathing. Inhaling through your nose, exhaling through your mouth, and preparing your mind and your body for what you're about to go through, okay?
All right.
All right, I'm not trying to scare you.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it sounds like I should probably run in the other direction.
There you go. So 3 exercises, and I want you to do them for 30 seconds each, all right? After you're done the 30 seconds each, you're going to rest for 30 seconds. After the 30 seconds of rest, you go right back into it again. Repeat this for about 4 times. It is challenging, the heart rate will be elevated, but the most important part is you've tried your best, your heart rate is elevated, and you burn some calories at the same time.
Right, because building that vigorous activity in is really important.
Absolutely. So let's start with the mountain climbers. All right, hands down, core nice and tight.
Right.
And in order for us to do this right, we're not gonna necessarily go really fast today, but you're gonna see the core nice and tight. You're in that elevated position and driving the knee toward the elbow. The goal here is for you to be on your toes, get in a real athletic shape as if you're about to take off on a track. 3, 2, and 1. Slow it down and hold that plank position at the end. This position right here is our starting position and our ending position. It's a mountain climber, but at the same time, it is core centric, okay?
Right.
So hold on, I'm not trying to torture you. I want you to go again. 3, 2, 1, go for it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, 30 seconds, stand up tall. All right, so that is your mountain climber, but always remember that each exercise that we do has some involvement of our core, okay?
Right.
Number 2 will be our high knees or our marching high knees, okay? Where you're picking up the knees as much as possible. We did this in our warm-up to get ourselves kind of, moving and going, all right?
Yeah.
This is a high knee march, but you can also do very dynamic where you're on the tip of your toes and you're going up as high as possible. 30 seconds, you're pushing it, heart rate is elevated, and you're gonna wanna,
Yeah, you're looking forward to that 30-second break,
when
right?
that timer goes off, you're like, whew, I really worked it, okay? So this is your march, 30 seconds, give it your all. Shake it off, and this one is called a skater. The skater allows you to go from one side to the next, okay? As if you were jumping over like an object, but I want you to pause, all right? Bend the knee a little bit. Yep, there you go. So this is called your skater hop, all right? What you're intentionally doing is jumping over an object, working on your balance, all right? And really feeling like an athlete every single time you perform this exercise. So in combination, right, you have your mountain climber working the core, you have your high knee march, and then you have your skaters, all right? Different directions, heart rate is elevated, and at the end of that 90 seconds in total, you will feel like you have worked it.
Right, and this bouncing on your feet is really good for your bones
Yes.
as well, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Strengthen your bones.
So remember, in that time that you're done, the recovery is very important, right? So taking that deep breath inside of our nose and blowing it out is pivotal for you to recover and for you to give your all when you do the second, third, and fourth round, okay?
Yeah,
Yes.
right.
4 rounds, work it, quick workout, but you can maximize your time if you do your best, okay?
Right, yes.
Right.
So you don't have to, it doesn't have to take a whole lot of time.
That's true. So that same exercise, now that you're done, that we did for the warm-up, we're gonna do that same exercise, but we're now gonna hold it, okay? What we're doing here is, it's a static hold, working on your balance. Breathe in 3, 2, 1, hands down, and then the other side as well, okay? 3, 2, 1, feet nice and wide, take a nice deep breath. Inhale through your nose, exhale through your mouth, and I want you to just reach all the way down to the floor, getting a good stretch of your hamstrings, because those might be tight. 3, 2, 1, come up nice and slow, 1 vertebrae at a time. Roll your shoulders back, and you are done.
Wow, thanks, Sean.
You
That
are
feels
very
good.
welcome.
Are midnight raids on the refrigerator spoiling your healthy eating plans? 3 recent studies found a delicious way to control your hunger cravings: eating more whole grains. The studies all showed that people who eat more whole grains actually eat less because they feel fuller with less food. Regularly enjoying oatmeal, quinoa, and other whole grains will make you feel full more quickly, and it will keep the hunger pangs away. Adding whole grains to your daily diet is another ageless advantage.
Now it's time for your questions. Someone called and asked, how can I get sunspots off my face? Well, that's a tough one. These spots commonly appear on exposed areas, so it's right there on your face, your arms, your hands, and if you've been out a lot in the sun, on your chest or your back. Now, I typically don't recommend the creams that are advertised because they contain quite strong chemicals. Light therapy is the best, either IPL, which is intense pulsed light, or laser. Now, of course, these modalities are costly and you'll need several treatments, but once that spot is treated, it is a permanent fix. So that's the good side of that cost. Someone else called and asked, is it safe to have a gold dental filling or a crown? You know, gold is favoured by dentists because it's hard and it lasts a long time, and people like it because it looks attractive. But if there are other metal fillings in your mouth with different metals, then you can get an electric current or little shocks that are created in the presence of saliva when the saliva is acid from your food. And when you think about it, 2 different metals with some acid, that makes a battery. And so, you know, you can get the shock, but you can also get ringing in the ears from that happening. So if you're getting a new filling, it's actually better to have a white composite filling. Stay away from metals completely. Someone texted and asked, what can I do to prevent a stroke? Wow, this is such an important question. You know, stroke prevention is something we should all be practicing. Strokes can happen either as the result of a burst blood vessel in the brain, which often is preceded by high blood pressure, or from a blockage to a blood vessel in the brain due to atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries. So a low-fat, low-salt, whole food, plant-based diet, rich in fruits and vegetables, legumes and whole grains is the best way to prevent both high blood pressure and hardening of the arteries. And Along with that, try and reach the guidelines for exercise. That's 22 minutes a day of moderate exercise and 2 sessions a week lasting 20 minutes of muscle building. Now, if you've got a question, send it in by Facebook, text, phone, or go to our website and leave it there, and my team and I will try to answer it as best we can. Like us on Facebook and become part of our community so we can communicate with you during the week, during the weekend. And now let's see what's in store today. Delicious and crunchy, apples have got to be one of the most popular of fruit. And there are plenty to choose from. 2,500 varieties in the United States alone. Red, green or gold, sweet, tart or juicy, there's sure to be one to suit everyone. They keep for weeks in the fridge and they don't bruise easily, so they're great for the lunchbox. This apple contains about 100 calories and it's rich in antioxidant phytonutrients, vitamin C, beta-carotene and vitamin B6. Apples are such a tradition in the United States. They're the official state fruit of Rhode Island, New York, Washington, and West Virginia. And everybody loves Mama's apple pie. But the best way to eat them is fresh. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. Bon appetit. Dr. Tom Rafai has been involved in over 20,000 hours of intensive lifestyle interventions with multidisciplinary care programs. One colleague asked him for 5 keys to optimal health, and here's what he came up with.
Obviously healthy nutrition, and we can define what that is, and physical activity, and I will specifically not say diet and exercise. It's nutrition and food, okay, and physical activity, even non-exercise activity. Mind matters, very important. Issues related to someone's stress management skills, anxiety, depression, history of loss, past history of abuse, something we can talk about and I personally manage and deal with, binge eating disorder, those type of issues. Even sleep apnea, which we know can affect your mindset and your mental state, I would put under the key of mind matters. Environment, food environment, of course, social environment, as well as even physical environment. You may not be able to change it, but I came to this wonderful facility we're at now, and I saw these wonderful long hallways. I said, there's no excuse. You can walk the hallways if you don't like a treadmill. And then, of course, accountability. And accountability can come in several different ways, particularly if you're involved in a program, but even self-monitoring, teaching someone self-monitoring techniques that work and are easy for them. Those seem to be the 5 key areas, and particularly environment and mind matters, that are not, I think, adequately addressed in the process of lifestyle changes. A very big focus on diet and exercise, or even nutrition and physical activity, which may end up being a 2-legged stool, so to speak. A 5-legged stool tends to work better.
Yes, absolutely. So, but let's start with those, since you mentioned them. Just simplify some good healthy nutrition advice that you give your patients.
Yes. Well, one of the good things about nutrition is it's really not complicated. It's actually shockingly simple, despite the cacophony of confusion that has saturated the public. But it's not necessarily easy. I mean, and one of the hard analogies I will convey to clients and patients is that if your friend is stuck under a car, it's not very complicated. You better find 6, 7 strong people and lift the car. There's no fancy physics formulas, no PhDs required. And not complicated. Easy? No, not complicated. So it comes down to a significant reliance and focus on whole fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, peas, whole grains. And if you're talking about trying to manage weight, probably cooked whole grains. We can talk about calorie density a bit and how to feel full on fewer calories. As you get to, if you're going to decide to go into the animal nutrition world, modest amounts of things such as yogurts and hopefully sustainable fish, and preferably, and this is now I'm throwing in some personal preferences, but preferably non-antibiotic treated, non-salt injected, and in any way, shape, or form humanely treated poultry and so forth. But those have to be in modest amounts. Amazing amounts of nutrition and protein we can get from legumes. We should learn to love legumes, and we don't do very well, versus so-called longevity hotspots like blue zones. And then in the world of reality, we have to also discuss some non-negotiables that patients may have due to their culture or their past history. Calorie-rich and processed foods, or what my friend in phenomenal nutrition and chef Jeff Novick calls crap, or calorie-rich and processed, everyone is going to have some, and at this rate, America, I think we have data around 58% of our caloric intake is now coming from highly processed foods. So I'll use the term 5% fun zone with clients and patients, which implies zero tolerance does not work, deprivation psychology kicks in, nor can we just say whatever. It's a pressure cooker without a release valve, zero tolerance approaches, versus a balloon mortgage. And we have to help people find the gray zone in the middle. That's where the other keys may come in. So it's really, that simple. And one added thing I would say from my personal and professional experiences in all of the kind of caloric things we were talking about, certainly there's going to be a lot of fiber, and we want to have a modicum of added sugar or salt. Because of added, caloric density issues, and with salt in terms of blood pressure, though it's not a caloric issue.
Physical activity?
Physical activity, I think we have a really big opportunity here, because at this point we still have less than 25% of Americans that are compliant with exercise guidelines. So clearly our public is saying, hey, this isn't working for me, going to a gym and so forth. And our lesson from the blue zones, the longevity hotspots in the world, from Loma Linda to Okinawa to Sardinia, to the Nicoya Peninsula and Icaria and the Greek Isles and so forth, is that there's a lot of purposeful non-exercise activity time. Now, the formal term is non-exercise activity thermogenesis, but that's gobbledygook. Non-exercise activity time, I would say become a neat freak. Yes, park a little bit further. You don't get door dings. Don't take the walking sidewalk at the mall or the airport. Find a staircase. They're so lonely. They really would like some friends, Oh, it's the 8th floor. Well, okay, doesn't have to be all or nothing. Start at the 6th floor, go up 2 flights and build up from there. We have a lot of opportunities to be physically active. Get off a bus stop earlier. But at this point, we now know that the evidence on non-exercise activity time is so potent that the American Diabetes Association has actually added a recommendation to try to limit inactivity for no more than 30 minutes and at least for 5 minutes. Even kick your legs if you can. Maybe we'll get into an opportunity to talk about how muscles are a what have you done for me lately tissue. And while exercise is great, and I do it, it doesn't round out physical activity completely. It is the icing, I would argue, if I may use a odd food metaphor, that the non-exercise activity time is the cake where we have some opportunity, and every little bit really does seem to count. Many people think if I'm not in the gym for an hour or even a half hour that it's meaningless. Absolutely not. There's a lot to say about complementing exercise with non-exercise activity time, or frankly, really maybe we should be thinking non-exercise activity time is the key and bonus it with exercise, considering all that we've browbeaten America to do exercise has resulted in less than 25% actually formally doing it.
Stand by for more wisdom from Dr. Tom right after the break. When eating disorders abound in your family, they can sneak up on you unawares. Tom was no exception, though he realised just before it cost him his life. He also realised he could never binge to that level again. Not long after that episode, he began working at the Pritikin Longevity Centre. That change in environment really helped to break the cycle for him, and life is different now. Watch.
I think binge eating is probably widely underdiagnosed. It's claimed that there's 2 or 3%, for instance, of people that suffer, but I think there are many people that suffer in silence with it or something akin. My first and most important message is you are not alone out there in whatever way that you might emotionally eat or stress overeat or binge eating disorder or anorexia nervosa, bulimia, whatever the case may be. I think there are many people, many more than maybe publicly recognize that do suffer it. And you can be healthy and still manage this issue. I don't claim myself to be recovered. I am in recovery. Sadly, I can say that it was harsh enough in the family that I lost my youngest brother to binge eating and related issues in January of 2017. It was I think another moment in which I was more motivated in a sad, but in a way that I hope doesn't have him lost in vain, to help me deal with this issue. So now today, I have relapses, but they are really more binging on things like fruit or Ezekiel bread, and yes, once in a while I may go out and buy some whatever, Smart Balance Light or something, and that's versus what I was doing before. I consider all of this quite a progress is perfection in my eyes, and I think I'll continue to work on it and improve over time. My children now motivate me highly. You know, I'm 50 years old. I have a 1-year-old boy and a 3-year-old daughter. It's incumbent upon me, and they really do make me think not just twice but 3 times, because, well, maybe it's selfish. They are so wonderful to enjoy. Yes, I want to be there for them and so forth, but truthfully it's selfish. I want to watch the wondrous beings that they are grow up and enjoy life and set a good example. I found a phenomenal psychologist, and I would say to anyone that is suffering like this, please don't hesitate to reach out. If you're in school, you have a lot of good counselors that are available typically at no cost. And if you are at work, there are employee assistance programs, but don't hesitate to reach out for professional help, even to friends and family. Having a dark secret like that is it's not easy to discuss, but unless you do, there really is no good chance that a recovery, and certainly at least getting in a state of recovering, is going to happen. So don't hold it in. You know, it's something then in which if you have a chance to find someone to talk about in any way, shape, or form, there may not be a perfect specialist that you'll find, but just discussing it in and of itself is therapeutic. I can tell you from my own realization that it's healthier for me to be open about it. As hard as it was, it has become much easier to just own it and to get it out and discuss. It was particularly with professionals, but even with close family members and friends.
And that's true of any addiction. To own it, to confess it openly, really does take away some of its power. In the previous segment, we were discussing the 5 keys to optimal health with Dr. Tom Rafai. He says the most important is environment, so I asked him to explain.
The study, I think that one of many that the American Diabetes Association used to change guidelines, but I think that strikes people, is one in diabetics who are sedentary, rotating them around into groups where they measured 2-hour blood sugars after dinner. And the interventions were either a brisk morning exercise, 45 minutes, versus a mild to moderate 15-minute walk within 30 minutes of dinner. And I'm kind of leading the witness here. You already know what the likely answer is, but the intervention that led to best 2-hour post-dinner blood sugars was not the brisk exercise in the morning, it was the 15-minute mild to moderate walk within 30 minutes of dinner. It wasn't to say there weren't blood pressure effects and mood effects and bone effects and vascular effects from exercise, but when it came to insulin resistance, the muscles were more like, well, you've exercised, but you've been sitting for 8 hours. I'm kind of shut down. Doesn't matter what you did in the morning as far as that is concerned. So every little bit really does count.
Now, you say the most important key out of your 5 is environment. Unpack that for us.
I will. I think that ultimately it is. I mean, all you have to do is look at Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway, and you realize, boy, your environment really does control you. You will eat vegetation and maybe whatever you can gather from the ocean and move or die. So in a sense, it is by definition the most important. Although I would say in a situation where you can't really move and change your atmosphere, mind matters comes in as a tie. But environment is really key because the false notion that food choices are really fully choices, and there is, of course, personal responsibility, don't get me wrong, but I think we now know that foods that are highly tempting, processed, they hold a place in the realm similar to addictive drugs. And for people, like myself who really deal with binge eating, it's really not a good idea to tell yourself you'll never have something again, yes, on one hand, nor to keep it constantly, chronically around you in constant temptation. The evidence on stimulus control, I think, is pretty clear. We would never question this if someone was a recovering alcoholic and say, well, you should be able to walk into a bar just fine, and why not? To just say no. Well, it doesn't quite work like that. So your food environment, particularly your home, work, and car, I mean, I like to get very practical. Your home is a place that you can actually control, and even then it's a challenge because sometimes you have a significant other that's not on the same page, or that we need something for the grandkids, but still, nevertheless, we get to a lot of increased odds of success if we can manage the household environment. It doesn't have to be all-out extreme. Even moving the Lucky Charms, I don't mean to beat up on one, it's more of a food metaphor than anything, from the counter into the pantry might be one thing to do to manage the environment. Also what we add to it, you know, it's not just what we remove, but I'm not a personal big fan of putting fruit in a crisper down in the bottom drawer of a refrigerator where 4 months later you see the wrinkled up apple sitting there that you forgot. I'm a fan of fruit bowls on the counter for more durable fruits and putting them up where you can see them. So it's really that simple. It sounds crazy, but it's that simple. Work environment as well. Bringing food with you to work and even on errands, and if they're going to be long errands in the car with you, are very simple, very evidence-based supported ways to modify environment. And then of course there is social environment. We kind of mentioned this in some evidence from the English longitudinal study of aging, that when spouses, for instance, or life partners work together on whether it's exercise or smoking or weight loss, the odds of success significantly increase. So social environment really comes down to not a mass social environment, but certainly who we're living with, and even skills on how to discuss lifestyle changes. I prefer privacy. I'm not so big into twittering that I'm about to jump on a weight loss plan or something and teach their own, and how to help guide clients and patients with sensitive discussions with work colleagues and family members, but to gather a positive and supportive social environment. Lastly, of course, there's physical environment we mentioned. It's not easily modifiable, but finding out where there's a local park or there's a mall that opens earlier, or the secret stairs that are lonely and want your friendship, and parking further, and all of these things really do start to add up. Even taking the second or third drinking fountain or bathroom walk at work can all really add up.
Last question. You mentioned self-accountability. How do you teach someone to be accountable to themselves? We've just got half a minute left.
Well, I would say that in all honesty, it's difficult. The best thing to do, in my opinion, is to find a support person or professional or program, but then you will learn that accountability as time goes on. We know that Jack LaLanne, for instance, who was a phenomenal example, had self-described sugar addict. He had a Dr. Bragg and other people to coach him, but at the end of his life, I remember a story of his wife saying when he was in a city where he couldn't find a place to exercise, and he got frustrated, which infected her with frustration. And she said, Jack, why don't you just skip today? Nobody's going to know. And he said, I'll know. So it can become internalized, but simple things such as checking blood pressure regularly or weighing regularly, as long as we know that the scale is not a be-all, end-all. It is what I would describe as a useful idiot. It's useful, it's convenient, it's not a be-all, end-all, but those type of self-monitoring techniques, even food diaries, not necessarily forever, but for a period of time, can be intermediaries in the process of accountability.
So they work more as a mirror so you can see yourself in terms of your weight or what you're eating, because we're somewhat oblivious.
Yes, and we're not going to get pulled over for eating too many Kit Kats. I wish they would. That was, I've got a PhD in the anatomy of a Kit Kat. If they would have just pulled me over and stopped me, that would have been great. But that's not going to happen. So while it's ideal to be in a program or be with a coach, a lifestyle medicine physician, for instance, that would be excellent. But there are ways to engage in self-accountability by having quality monitoring techniques, as long as you don't overwhelm someone with monitoring so many things that it becomes a real stress and excessive challenge.
The 5 signs of cardiometabolic disease are a high blood pressure, increased waist measurement, elevated cholesterol, triglycerides, and glucose. 1 in 4 of us have 3 of those signs already, meaning we have metabolic syndrome and suboptimal health. On the other hand, we now have 5 keys to optimal wellness: healthy nutrition, physical activity, optimizing mind matters, environment, and having accountability. So which one will you choose to work on today? Thanks for joining us on Go Healthy for Good. I'll see you next time.